You know what? I'm not that good at puzzle games. I've just never been that good at connecting the dots. I like playing them, but especially with more complicated and complex games, I've just never been that good at finding the aha moment. That moment of realization when a string of moves comes together perfectly to bring a puzzle to a satisfying and victorious conclusion. Thus, I gravitate more towards reactionary, or I guess some people would call them more casual, puzzle games that rely more on reaction time and random elements to sustain their gameplay. Tetris would be the most obvious example there, for good reason, but I've also always had an affinity for things like Tetris Attack, or Panel de Pon as it was known in Japan, and Puyo Puyo, or Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine as I knew it growing up. Yeah, a lot of puzzle games didn't exactly get here to America without some major changes. However, with the release of the Nintendo Switch, people outside of Japan in the year 2017 were able to experience a damn fine puzzle crossover game that at that point was already 3 years old. Yeah, this game was released on pretty much every platform imaginable back in 2014 in Japan, even the Xbox One of all things, but only the PS4, Switch, and Windows versions were released worldwide, and again, only 3 years after it had already come out. I'm confused about this personally. I mean, yeah, Puyo Puyo isn't exactly well known outside of Japan, but it's had a handful of releases here and there that were decent enough. They just didn't set the world on fire. Tetris, on the other hand, well, everyone knows about Tetris. People who don't even play video games know about Tetris. I'd like to think that Tetris itself would be enough to carry the game overseas, but I might just be talking out of my ass with that. I don't really know what goes into decisions like this. It's a damn shame it took so long to get over here too, because the game is fantastic, and the two franchises work surprisingly well together, blending together in a way that makes the old feel new again, to use a cliched phrase. I think it's safe to assume most people know how to play Tetris. You stack falling blocks of varying shapes together to form rows, and make them disappear without letting them reach the top of the play area. Puyo Puyo, on the other hand, is slightly different. It uses the same falling object idea as Tetris, but rather than trying to form rows, you just have to get the little Puyo blobs to come together in groups of 4 or more matching colors to get the group to disappear and cause any colors on top of it to fall down. Whereas Tetris is more about building up organized rows and then trying to clear as many as you can with a single move, Puyo is about building up towers and trying to chain together combinations, making it a bit more complex, but no less frantic than Tetris. And while you can play regular Tetris or Puyo on their own here, the main stars of the show are the new mix and match modes that combine the two gameplay styles in unique ways. Fever I don't really care for though. Fever mode involves you either trying to clear the screen of blocks in Tetris by filling obvious gaps with the same pieces until the screen is clear, while on the Puyo side you have to clear an entire screen in a single combination attack. Afterwards, the two screens attack one another, and whoever had the highest score will deal the most damage to their opponent, and this continues until someone runs out of hit points, and from my experience, the mode either lasts way too long when you have the opponents of equal skill, or it's an absolute curb stomp. Swap and Fusion though, I'm all about that. Swap mode involves playing both Puyo and Tetris, and then once a clock runs out, the mode will switch to its opposite. However, the playing field remains locked when it's swapped, meaning that if you were doing really poorly on one side, it might be a good idea to try and earn a quick victory before you're forced to swap back to it. It gets even more complex with the ability to perform switch combos, where you can chain together clearing lines and Puyos just as the playing field switches in order to earn bonus points if playing alone, or extra attack blocks if you're fighting a friend. And then there's Fusion mode, where the Puyos are a little bit smaller, and then all of a sudden you have massive Tetris blocks falling down on top of them. Tetris blocks can only be cleared by forming rows with other Tetris blocks, and therefore can trap Puyos in their cracks if you aren't careful. What's more, the blocks will also squish any Puyos under them while they're falling, causing the Puyos to reappear and fall from the top of the screen after the block has landed. Some blocks will also morph between a block and a group of Puyos as they're falling, introducing an element of timing as to when you want them to fall and land on the ground in what form. It's a mode that takes some amount of time to wrap your head around and work out just how the Puyos and the Tetrads work together. Thankfully, the game does have a very robust help and tutorial section, which can help you get your bearings for any of these modes, which is good considering that I don't think a lot of players in the West would be totally familiar with how Puyo Puyo is played. In addition to those 5 main modes, there's also a series of fun challenges for a single player that are basically there just to test your skills when you try to beat your own high score, but all of them are pretty damn enjoyable. You have your usual endless modes, but also have modes like Tiny Puyo, where all the Puyos are twice as small as usual, Sprint and Marathon, which are basically trying to compete against the clock, and Ultra, which is... oh boy. I would also be remiss if I didn't mention that the game has a very robust and lengthy story mode, something that I was not expecting to be sure, but that I was really happy to see. It's divided up into several chapters, with 10 stages in each chapter, with a difficulty curve that is just right, with the early stages being simple enough for anyone just learning the game to beat, and absolutely destroy if you have any sort of experience with them, with the challenge getting incrementally harder as it goes on, culminating in a series of challenges taking place after the main story is finished that are quite a bit tougher than anything that came before. And if you're the sort who's interested in improving, you can go back to any stage at any time and try to go for the 3-star rating in each stage, which does unlock a few small cosmetic changes that you can use at your discretion. The story itself is pretty cute and enjoyable, though nothing special. It involves the Tetris dimension, patrolled by a series of characters named after different blocks, suddenly going haywire, causing the Puyo dimensions to cross over and Puyos and Tetrads to rain down from the sky. And so the Tetris characters need to team up with the various characters from across the Puyo Puyo multiverse, and yes, Puyo actually does have a multiverse, to discover the source of the problem and stop it before all their worlds are covered in blocks and blobs. Like I said, nothing earth-shattering, but the fact that it's here and obviously has been given a lot of attention by the devs does make me happy. There is more effort in this story mode than Capcom put into Street Fighter V's story, that's for sure. It's a great addition to the game, and while I might not be familiar with all the characters involved, they do manage to be relatively entertaining, bolstered by an exceptional English dub.
Young lady, I am in your debt. You stop this from being one of those dog day afternoons.
Huh? Hey, it's Dongari Gairu!
Onion! I forget. Did I describe the way his smile makes me shiver?
Yes, twice now.
Who is a good dog? That is correct. Nothing to fear.
For the most part, there are still some performances that stick out for all the wrong reasons.
It's been a while. I don't mean to bother you.
And some of the cutscenes do drag a little more than is necessary, but you can skip them if you want to, though I didn't find myself doing so very often. The soundtrack is also pretty damn good, with bouncy, sweet little pop ditties that effortlessly mix classic Tetris themes with the feel of the more upbeat Puyo Puyo sound. It's nothing that I'd listen to casually myself, but it does a great job of representing the tenseness of a good bout of puzzle fun. And then there's online mode, which I admit might be my absolute highlight for this game. Just being able to play this game against other players over Wi-Fi adds a lot to the game's longevity, and it feels great. I've not had any problems with lag or matchmaking since I've started playing this online, and just the fact that you have the ability to limit the modes that you want to play whenever you go online is really nice. I am not ashamed to admit I got way more footage than I needed for this review just because I was having such a good time playing it. And if you don't feel like going online, the game has a fantastic couch multiplayer option as well, showing that playing with friends that you can actually see is just as fun as it's always been. The game also looks pretty good as well. You don't often expect great visuals from a puzzle game, and it's not like there's any big animation here either, but its colorful and cartoony nature does it a lot of favors. The character designs are cute and appealing, the colors pop, the backgrounds are simple but fun. Its visual design isn't amazing, but it fits the game very nicely and adds to the fun that is already present here. So long as you're not adverse to bright or cute colors, I find this game's visual design quite appealing. If you want to check the game out for yourself, it's pretty damn cheap at this point. It's only $20 for the Windows or PS4 version, though it's a full $10 more on the Switch because of course it is. But regardless of the platform, this game is more than worth your time, regardless of your familiarity or skill level with either franchise. It's just plain fun, and when it comes to puzzle games like this, that's all you need. Thanks for watching. I'll see you all next time, everyone.
It's not every day you see a chihuahua sitting in a robot's lap.